Okay, I think we're live.
Excellent.
Perfect. Hi everyone, welcome. Um, yeah, welcome to today's session. So today's webinar is like just a 30-minute webinar. So it's short, it's simple. Hopefully it's still going to be useful though and impacting. All about doing a mental health MOT, essentially, being able to kind of check in with yourself. So my name's Hayley, and I'm joining from PMAC, and today we are joined by Nigel.
How do you do, everybody? From ECS Automotive.
Yeah, perfect. So for anyone who's not joined one of our PMAC and ECS webinars before, we've been working together to create a series really of webinars for people in the automotive industry, very, very much related to like mental health and well-being and the mental health and well-being of the people working in it. So there are lots and lots of challenges very unique to working in this industry. And so together, what we're creating and what we're doing is we're kind of pulling together information that we hope will help from a psychological perspective, but then also, you know, Nigel and the team at ECS have been amazing at pulling together information in terms of thinking about ways of working and strategies and processes and procedures and all sorts of things like that that also help to improve the mental health and the well-being of the staff. So today, as we said, it's only a 30-minute session, but we're thinking about basically having some sort of framework to be able to do a little bit of a check-in and assessment of your own mental health. Lots of people talk now about mental health and thinking about your mental health, but sometimes that can be really difficult to know what I need to think about and what is it that I'm looking for and how do I use that information? Lots of us, even if we were struggling with feeling low, we might have felt the same way for such a long time that we've kind of accepted it now. So the idea with us kind of pulling together a bit of an MOT is hopefully it will feel easy, accessible and memorable for those of you working in this industry. And again, as much as a lot of what we're talking about does focus on the individual, it is also useful for any managers here to think about, the workplace and the environment and the way that, ways of working and policies and procedures might impact mental health. So again, Nigel is here and we'll also be offering some consideration from, a business perspective and a workplace kind of perspective to minimize the impact on your people. The happier and healthier your team, the more successful your business, essentially, the easier it is to meet your goals. So when we're thinking about mental health, lots of people don't put an awful lot of thought really into like how they're doing at the moment. Lots of us like to think that we're doing as good as we can be and that everything's kind of great and shiny and ideal and it's, we're doing as well as we possibly can be. The reality can be that we might be functioning and we're kind of navigating day to day, but actually things aren't as easy as they could be. And actually life might be more challenging than it could be or should be. So when we're thinking about, doing this MOT, what we're not suggesting is that people should be looking to be happy all of the time and feeling stress-free all of the time and everything to be, like the Ferrari. Ultimately, what we're aiming for really is just good enough. So before we go any further, what we are going to do during this session is we're going to launch little polls here and there so that you can get involved. Any responses are anonymous, but they are really, really useful. So first of all, I just want to ask, like, what signs might you recognise in other people that might indicate that they're struggling with their mental health? Is there anything that you feel confident that you recognise maybe in other people that you might think, oh, maybe, maybe Nigel's not quite himself at the minute. Maybe, maybe he's kind of struggling. Maybe something doesn't seem quite right. So I'm starting to see some responses. So we've got becoming withdrawn, mood swings, becoming quite reactive, disengaging, perfect. So that withdrawing from things, disengaging with people, being quiet are all really good indicators. Becoming irritated and irritable, with other people much more quickly is really key. Being very reactive, mood swings, yeah. So like people kind of changing from one moment to the next and you don't really know what to expect sometimes, that can be a really good indicator that people are feeling quite overwhelmed. Snappy, disengaged, quick to react, perfect. Okay, so we might have an idea of what we're looking for in other people, but do we know what we're looking for in ourselves? Like, do you know how to recognize if your mental health is struggling? Are there things that you might recognize in yourself? And I will put it to you guys again. And I'll just see if these come through. Sometimes there's a slight lag. Sometimes there's just a second. Oh, perfect. Yeah, this is a really good one. So biting your nails. So that might be something that we do if we're feeling stressed or anxious. Stress, yeah, so being more sensitive to stress, feeling stressed more easily than usual, feeling low maybe. Yeah. Again, being reactive, the stress that, oh, hobbies. So yeah, so maybe you stop engaging in hobbies quite so much. That can be a really good sign of your mood, particularly if we're feeling low. It can feel like everything feels like an awful lot of effort for not a lot of reward. So we can see that people stop engaging in the hobbies. But what I think is quite interesting is we've got, you know, a lot less responses for this than we do when we're looking at, you know, signs in other people, actually. So it is really, really important that we are mindful, actually, of how we're doing rather than just kind of trundling along all the time and just doing our absolute best without any consideration for how we're doing. So signs might be some of the things that have come up. So it might be that there's changes to your physical appearance or to others. Being much more tired actually is a really key one. It can be exhausting when we're struggling with our mental health. Not doing things as much, drinking more or smoking more. Also physical things like headaches or being unwell all the time can show that you're run down. Or if you've got constant aches and pains, constant jaw jaw rate, you're grinding your teeth, obviously things like that, it is also worth speaking to a doctor about because there could be physical health things going on, but actually our mind and our body are so interconnected that lots of mental health issues show up as problems with your physical health. And again, we wanted to do this session for the automotive industry specifically because the survey done by Ben that came out last year showed that 1 in 3 people in the automotive industry struggle with their mental health and said that work had a direct impact on that, which is really, really alarming, I suppose, because for other industries that average is 1 in 6 rather than 1 in 3. So just before we start the MOT and start thinking about what we need to look at, what do you think the common issue, the most common issue is for people in this industry who are struggling with the mental health? What do you think, like the most common challenges for people, given that 1 in 3 people report to struggling with the mental health? Do we have any ideas? Nigel, have you got any immediate thoughts or anything that you think comes to mind initially?
Yeah, a lot of the time people might think that they're feeling alone. They've got nobody to help them. They probably don't have a process in place to help them with various things. And they just need to be asking the question. There's people there to help, but it's just knowing which people to ask. So yeah, it's you do see it quite a few times, especially with the amount of sites that we go visit.
Yeah, I'm sure. So so things that come up here, it looks like, lads culture in some places, and that kind of bravado, stress, the targets, the pressure, feeling overlooked, that's quite poignant, really. And I think kind of plays into like what you've just said, Nigel, feeling on your own with things, feeling like it's just you feeling like that. And actually, if we know that like a third of us are struggling, that's a lot of us who are feeling alone kind of in the same place at the same time. So the number one challenge in the industry is stress. 66% of people were struggling with stress, followed by poor sleep, low mood, anxiety, and then like low confidence as well. Like the longer we struggle, particularly without support, the more it feels like it's a problem with us and it does impact our self-esteem. So when's a good time to do these mental health MOTs? Well, given that I'm sure March is an extremely busy period, as Nigel is well informed us about with the new registration, and also September, Now's a really good time. Like, now that you've got through that really, really busy, overwhelming period, now's a really good time to check in with yourself and seeing how you're doing and thinking about making adjustments to make your life better and easier. It might also be worth doing again in advance. Like, if any of you have attended the previous sessions we've done things around unwinding after work and improving sleep, which is a common challenge. We've done things on preventing stress. So you can, watch those recordings back. They were recorded. But any time's a good time. If you notice any sort of changes, that's a good time to kind of check in. And it can be useful to do it with other people as well, to have conversations. Other people might have picked up on changes in you that you're not necessarily aware of yourself. So when we're thinking about doing this MOT, we're thinking about lots of different areas. And the idea being that you're not expected to remember all of these things, but it might just make it a bit more easy to kind of remember. So starting off with, for example, the driver's view. So it's really, really useful to kind of check in with yourself and think about, how do I see the road ahead? Do I have things to look forward to in the future? Do I have hopes? Do I feel like things, even if it's really difficult right now, do I believe that things can be better? Do I believe that I'm capable of getting myself to that place? If everything feels very bleak and the future feels very bleak, and we're struggling to have hope that things can be different, or it feels difficult to imagine what can help, that's usually a pretty good indicator that we're struggling maybe with our mental health. Also thinking about your dashboard, are there any warning lights? Are you making more mistakes than usual? Are other people around you saying that you're snappier than usual, you're not quite yourself? Those are really key, important information, I suppose, to pay attention to. We might think about our fuel. So again, during really, really busy periods, like the new registration periods, you might become more reliant on caffeine and coffee and sugar and stuff out the vending machine to keep you going. But these things also have a shelf life, and they can spike our anxiety, for example, massively, which means that then day to day, we might feel more worried about what we're doing. We might overthink everything. We might look at the negatives. So actually, the things that we're putting into our body will impact massively how able we are to move and to run, in the same way that if you put diesel into a petrol, the car isn't going to get very far. It really, really isn't. And seatbelts. So thinking about who's kind of helping you, what support is there in place? Like, as people, we are very, very social creatures. Our instinct in the face of any sort of stress isn't actually to immediately experience that fight or flight. Our instinct is to talk to other people. Now, if we feel like we're not supported by the people around us, we don't know who to speak to in work, you don't know whether you can talk to your manager, you don't know if you can approach HR, you don't know what support is there, and we feel isolated, then we're more likely to feel that kind of overwhelming stress and anxiety. And again, that isolation that Nigel spoke about. Yeah. So it's about, having people in your life that you do feel able to talk to. And kind of on that, we've got a little poll actually, like, if you were noticing yourself becoming stressed or overwhelmed, are you somebody that would talk to people, and would you do it straight away? Or, do you try to see how long you can go without speaking to other people? Do you only speak to them if somebody else brings it up? Do you just get on with it yourself? And it looks at the moment like people will just try to get on, see how they got on themselves first without wanting to maybe lean on other people or share how you're feeling. And somebody's saying, oh, a couple of people just say, actually, do you know what? No, I just tried to get on with it. I just tried to plow through. Which again is something that can change and that can make things easier for us. So it's important, if there are people in our life that we can talk to, that actually we also put our seatbelt on and we use that support, which can make the day-to-day more easy. We might think about breaks. So like, our brains need to have periods of time where they're not having to think and be on, to be able to then manage the next stress that arises, essentially. So that might, look like thinking about actually taking your lunch break. It might look like making sure you take regular breaks from work and using your annual leave. So again, on that point, like, how often do people actually take the lunch break? Do you just eat while you work? Do you take it as and when you kind of can? Do you never take your lunch break? How you manage stresses in the morning versus 4:30 in the afternoon, half an hour before you're finishing, if you've not had a rest all day, can be very, very different. And by the end of the day, you might feel like you've really not got anything left. And overwhelmingly, it looks like most people are taking a break sometimes. One person taking a break every day. So we can all learn from you, whoever you are. Someone's doing it most days, so making an effort, but it looks by far and away like most people are just kind of doing it as and when it feels like it's doable. But actually, the time to rest is when we don't have time. That's when we're going to benefit from it the most. Suspension. If things are happening unexpectedly, such as, you know, because, I don't know, there's problems with ways of working, for example, or, I don't know, Nigel, I'm sure you've got plenty of examples of things that might crop up.
Yeah, the suspension and steering go in hand, really. There's many times that things will crop up, and it's just like the bumps in the road. You need to be having something or a process in place that will actually get you on the right path again. So you need to look at what processes you've got, who you can actually lean on, who's the person that you need to go see. That will all help you going forward. You're not on your own. There is people there that will help, but it's just knowing who to talk to or which way to go.
Yeah, and also, like, are the ways of working that are just, we do it this way because that's just the way we do it, are they actually useful? Actually, is it causing more problems? But when these things come up, how well do you adapt to them? Do you feel completely overwhelmed, full of self-doubt, really struggle to put one foot in front of the other? You can't decide where to start. It's difficult to get going. Or actually, do you notice kind of the stress building and you're able to manage that? Like, that's a really, really good sign. Which kind of leads us on to, like, the electrics. Like, are you really irritable? Are you overheating quite quickly? Are you quick to anger, quick to blame other people? Maybe if you lost your spark altogether, that's a really, really big sign. That, again, things aren't as well as they could be. But then also, like we mentioned in there, like the music. So, like, what kind of things are you hearing? If you got into a car and it was beeping constantly, it was clunking, it sounded like bits were falling to pieces, you're not going to feel very confident getting in it and going very far. And so you're likely then to maybe keep yourself small. If you're constantly talking to yourself in a very negative way, as much as you might be very used to that, and that's the way you've always thought about yourself and spoken to yourself, that's going to make everything significantly more difficult. Also, like, again, it kind of relates to, like, the people around you. Are the people around you recognizing when you do things well? As managers, are you making sure that you really acknowledge when somebody's done something well, so that, you know, they, again, don't feel so alone, as we've already mentioned, when things are challenging, but also they feel valued. So what we're hearing day to day in background noise almost is really important. And then thinking about things like the body. So when we are struggling with our mental health, as we've said, there are lots of physical health challenges that will present. Headaches, appetite changes, needing the toilet all of the time, your weight might change. But also what we might notice are things like not really caring in the same way about being clean shaven every day and ironing your shirts before work, or ironing your overalls, or washing things, or, you know, the way that we take care of ourselves might slip and we might kind of neglect ourselves a little bit. That's a good sign that there are things that can be improved. The steering, as Nigel's already briefly touched on, like, do you feel like you have the ability to influence how things go? Do you feel like you have any control of your life? Do you feel like your emotions just completely control you? Do you feel like you're being dragged along in work and you know, big decisions are made and you've got absolutely no control or influence over it, and that feels really overwhelming? But even just things like, you know, the bills going up, financial stress is increasing, might make us feel a bit out of control. The more out of control we feel without support in place, the harder that is to then manage day to day. And so lastly, we think about the manual. So, like, actually, do you know what support is in place? Do you know what helps you? Do you know what works for you? Do you know who you can speak to? If you're in work, do you know where you can go? For yourself, like, thinking about the things that you do day to day, almost like by the book, out of habit, how are they helping you? Do you know when it's time to go to bed or to knock the drink on the head, for example? Like, are they helping it, or day to day these things maybe making life a bit more difficult? So, as we mentioned earlier, these are things that you can look at within yourself. It might also be that as as managers, these are things to maybe have a look at and have a think about for your team, thinking about the ways that you're working and whether or not those are adding to the stresses and pressures for your team, or whether actually it's making it more easy for them. And I know when we've spoken before, Nigel, you were talking about, you know, the happier your team are and the healthier your team are, the better they work, like the more productive your business then becomes.
That's true. So true.
So what we can do, we can take all these things, have a little think like about emotionally, how am I feeling day to day? What kind of things am I thinking about myself? How adaptable am I? What fuel am I putting into my body? All these sorts of things. And what we can do is, like an MOT, we can look at the passes, all the things that we're doing really, really well that need acknowledging and that we can build on. We can look at advisories, so things that might be something that we need to pay attention to, and things that we might consider, adapting and putting things in place to support us better. And then also there will be things that might require immediate attention. So advisories might be things like if you really can't sleep at night because you just cannot stop thinking and worrying about how tomorrow might be or what maybe went wrong today. You really can't relax, for example. If you feel like you're constantly needing reassurance, maybe from a manager, for example, you've lost confidence in your ability to do, your work and do it well. If you're relying on substances like cigarettes, like alcohol, like food to change how you're feeling, if you're noticing that you don't really get excited anymore for the things that you would normally look forward to, or you've stopped doing those things as much, these are all things that are signs that actually maybe my mental health is suffering a little bit at the moment, and there are things that I can do differently. And there are always things we can do. Now, unfortunately, sometimes there might be things that require immediate attention. And so these might be things like, actually, if you are having thoughts about, people being better off if you weren't here, or really struggling to see a way through, or becoming completely dependent on other substances to help you to manage and to just drag yourself through the day, or if you feel completely disconnected from anything and everything else, you feel completely numb and shut off. For some people, they might end up kind of injuring themselves as a way to feel something or to manage your emotions. Anything like this, what we really, really, really want to do and to encourage anyone to do is to just reach out and get support. You would be surprised how much of a difference it can make, even just saying these things and getting it off your chest. And the support is there. Nobody deserves to feel this way, and nobody needs to continue to feel this way, essentially. But as we said, there will also be things that you're already doing well that deserve to be acknowledged and that we want to do more of, essentially. Even if there are some advisories there, what we can think about is looking at what am I already doing well and can I do more of that? So things like having hope for the future, like believing, even if, you're in the midst of it in March and everything feels overwhelming and you're exhausted and you don't know how you're going to get through the next couple of weeks, for example, if you're hopeful that actually one way or another you're going to find a way, and this time in a month everything will feel easier, everything will be different, that is going to help you significantly to get through. If even when you're making mistakes because you're exhausted and your confidence is through the floor and you're really, really anxious, for example, if you believe, inherently that you're capable of doing things and doing it well, that will help. That's what we call a protective factor. It's going to help improve your mental health and keep you well. If you are able to recognize how you're feeling, you're recognizing the impact of, who you're around. Actually, not everyone who's around us sometimes does lift us up in the way that we hope. If you're able to have hobbies and interests and you make time for them, this is amazing. Like, keep doing that, do more of it, if anything. All of these things are brilliant, and it's not just about focusing on the areas for improvement when we're thinking about our mental health. We need to also think about, like, what do I do well, and recognizing that. And like we've already kind of touched on, even if you felt the same way for a long, long time, that doesn't mean that this is how you will always feel, or that there's no other way to feel, that nothing's going to help. Like, even one tiny decision, one tiny change can actually have like really, really significant impacts. So when we're working with ECS, we've been thinking an awful lot about breaking things down into like processes and accountability and communication to help businesses, you know, in this industry to succeed, but then also as people. So your processes, that might look like thinking again about the things that you're doing more often than not, and actually how much they are helping you or making things more difficult. Accountability. So it's not our fault at all that we struggle with our mental health. And at the same time, nobody else can do the things that we need to do that help us. Nobody else can help us to, you know, to fuel our bodies properly. Nobody else can make us engage in a conversation and talk honestly about how we're feeling. Nobody else can go to the doctor for us. So as much as it's not our fault that we're struggling, it's as much as it can feel like a lot of responsibility, it's a massive opportunity, and it's really empowering actually to be the person that, you know, looks after you and makes these changes. And then communication, like communicating with the people around you, telling your managers if you're struggling, telling them if you're overwhelmed, making sure that you are spending time with other people, even when you don't want to, even when you're exhausted, even when it doesn't feel like you can be honest, for example. Like, it's still important that we do these things because we are, you know, by nature, very, very much designed to be around other people. So what can we do to improve our mental health if there are things that we are struggling with? The first thing we can think about is creating helpful habits. So, you know, I can't imagine anybody feels better and like life is easier and they feel more confident and more motivated when you've not slept, you've not drank all day, you've had nothing to eat for the last 3 days, for example. Like, it's not meeting the needs that just, you know, are fundamental to survival makes everything more difficult. And we often underestimate how much of a significant change that can make. We want to schedule like activities, like plan for them to make it more likely that it's going to happen. Our motivation to do these things when we're struggling with our mental health will be lower. Our energy, our ability to start doing these things is going to be lower. It's going to be a lot harder. So if we plan it, we're more likely to do it. So things that give you a sense of achievement, and that might even be you taking a few minutes yourself to reflect on what you did really, really well during that registration period, or talking to your manager and reflecting with them on the things that you still did really well. Schedule anything that helps you to feel closer to other people, whether it's your friends, whether it's relatives, it doesn't matter. And doing things that you enjoy, even if at the minute you don't feel like you enjoy them as much, things that you used to enjoy. Because when we do differently, it can help us to feel differently. If everything in your body is telling you to ring in sick from work and stay in bed all day and not really do anything, and you do that all day, we're increasing the likelihood that that's how we're going to feel for the rest of the day. If you act as though you're going to enjoy going to this football match with your friends, even though at the minute you don't feel like you've got the energy or you feel too anxious, what we're doing is we're increasing the likelihood that we might actually then feel differently. We also want to practice naming how you're feeling, whether it's in yourself, whether it's just thinking to yourself, writing it down, saying it to someone else. Our emotions can completely hijack us and drive us, and it makes it very, very difficult to think differently. If we're able to say actually what's actually going on at the minute, you know, it's not just I'm overwhelmed, but I'm stressed, I'm struggling to think clearly, I'm frustrated, I'm anxious, I'm doubting myself. Actually, just doing that in itself can help to kind of activate like the thinking areas of your brain, which take away energy from the emotional side of your brain, so it can help calm your emotions down. We can think about making sure that we laugh as often as we possibly can, particularly with other people. Like, watch comedy when you get home from a really, really busy day, or listen to a funny podcast or a funny radio station, or go to see comedy, anything. Like, the more we're laughing, the more we literally replace all those stress hormones in our body with hormones that make us feel good and make us feel happier, even if for a period of time. The more often we do it, the better. And just know that you're not to blame. Like, life is really difficult. We struggle with our mental health because life is so difficult. It's not our fault that we struggle. And at the same time, there are things that we can do that are going to improve that. So one thing that we always suggest is like just being as open-minded as you possibly can. Like, everything you try that you think won't help is one step closer to finding something that will. So an open mind can go a very, very, very long way when it comes to our mental health, not assuming we know everything there is to know about ourselves. and we thought we'd end with this quote that, like, your present circumstances don't determine where you're going to go, just where we're starting from. So with that, just thank you all so much for being here and for giving us some time. Thank you for interacting as well so much with the polls. I'm sure you felt interrogated. I was throwing them at you. So I do apologise. But we really, really appreciate all your involvement and engagement. Thank you so much, Nigel, and everyone at ECS for, you know, helping us to make sure that we really understand the challenges that come with working in this industry, and to make it as useful and relevant to all of you working within it as we possibly could. And yeah, you are very more than welcome to join us for the next session we've got next week. That's very, very much for managers to help in, you know, support any colleagues who are struggling with their mental health. So yeah, we hope to see you there. Also, we did record the first couple of sessions, so please, 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 you know, watch them if they're going to be useful about preventing stress and unwinding after work and sleeping better. And yeah, sorry, Nigel.
No, I was just going to say, I wanted to say thank you to Hayley and the PMAC team, and hopefully there's a lot of useful information there for you. Our details are there for you. We're there to help. If you want to get in touch with us after this, that's fine. Thank you very much for everything you're doing, Hayley. It's brilliant.
Yeah, no, thank you, Nigel. And yeah, again, ECS helped to make the ways of working an awful lot easier, which can be brilliant in reducing that initial stress in the first place and just making everything a bit easier day to day. So definitely do also get in touch with them. But yeah, thank you all so much for being here. And yeah, take care of yourselves. Enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully we will see you again.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you all so much. Thank you.